I forgot to add water. This is a die-cast car, and this is a micro-machine. Micro-machines were first introduced by toymaker Galoob in 1986, and they differentiated themselves by being, well, micro. Instead of the typical 1/64 scale cars, micro-machines offered their cars at a scale of about 1 to 148, or a bit larger than the popular N-scale model train. Galoob ruled the toy world in the late 80s to the early 90s with this series of collectible cars, and they produced all sorts of cars, trucks, boats, and of course, trains. Micro Machines first introduced their train line in 1989, although it was not the first train to be included in the line. I'm not going to delve into those one-off releases before the dedicated train line came out, mostly just to stay focused on that dedicated series. This line would be canned by 1991, and we'll go into why it might have died off later. Every train in the Micro Machines line always came as a dedicated 5 or 6 unit set, and sets were often repeated with different liveries and the occasional change of a car in special variants. The most common Micro Machines train set I see is this passenger set with an EMD F-unit styled locomotive with a baggage car, 2 double-decker superliner cars, and an observation car. It came in a few different liveries, red and silver, blue and white, Rio Grande, although a Santa Fe version and a red, yellow, and silver version of the F-unit itself are known to exist. The locomotive is closest to an EMD F9, judging by the vents on the side, and Micro Machines called it as such. The car following it is a streamlined 40s or 50s era baggage car, followed by 2 Amtrak Superliner 1 styled cars from 1979. Why they ended up going with double-decker cars that didn't match super well with the baggage car is beyond me. This set includes a standard Superliner coach and a Superliner sightseer lounge with the windows properly separated. Oh, that's actually a really nice detail. The last car on these sets was this observation car with a Vista Dome up top. Now, this car doesn't even match the baggage car, as it has fluted sides and a roof, which is odd. Coming around the back, there is a little light paint on both the top and rear of the car body, and there is no coupler on the back of this car, which makes sense, but it's a bit of a missed opportunity, as the real streamlined observation cars did have rear couplers. All these coaches are the same length, and they are the longest cars released in the entire Micro Machines train line. Another pretty common set I see is this freight set. The box claims the locomotive in this is a GP40, much like the Hot Wheels Railroad release, but unlike the Hot Wheels Railroad, I'm actually going to challenge that idea, since this locomotive has 2 radiator fans and 2 exhaust stacks flanking the middle one, which makes it a GP38. This locomotive is longer than the F unit and came in a couple different liveries: Santa Fe, Union Pacific, Army, and a red and white version. Each of these sets contain 4 train cars, boxcar, covered hopper, livestock car, and a little caboose that is very reminiscent of an old lifelike HO1. And this livestock car is the longest freight car Micro Machines ever made that wasn't a special release. This next one is easily my favorite. This is the Bullet Train, very closely based on the TGV Sud-S set from the 1980s. The set included 2 power cars, 2 transition cars, I'm not sure what the actual name for these is, and a unique coach with 2 pin couplers instead of a pin at one end and a hook at the other. This set came in 4 colors: TGV orange, red and white, blue and white, and a silver, black, and orange variant. The last set here is probably the one everyone actually wants to see. So here's the set that came with the steam locomotive. These sets always came with a USRA 060 steam locomotive with a slope-back tender, a tender designed for better visibility when switching. The locomotive also has the unique distinction of working rods, although it only goes to 2 of the 3 axles for what I can only assume are detail reasons, as the valve gear detail is molded into the body. It is also the only unit in the entire Micro Machines train line to have more than 2 axles. Behind the locomotive and tender, these sets usually include an ore car, which is the shortest train car Micro Machines offered. We're the only sets to include a flat car with an unremovable load, which is a very big missed opportunity if you ask me, and also the only set to feature this little tank car. The train set was rounded off with this exclusive off-center cupola caboose that was only bundled with steam locomotives. Big shout out to the Iron Man #1 set for being the only set in the entire MicroMachines train line to mix fictional railroads and real-world railroads. MicroMachines had a special line of trains that would basically take a normal train set and replace one of the cars with a special car. These were dubbed the Power Sound line that swapped out a car in each set for a livestock car if it was a freight set, and a special superliner coach in the silver and red passenger set. These cars are the same length as the coaches, including the passenger set, making them as long as the longest cars in the range. These cars take two small size 393 watch batteries, and when turned on will play sounds that vaguely sound like a locomotive in motion and will play a whistle or horn when the button on top is pressed. Okay, so it's Nate here from the edit. I actually took these train cars to a Batteries Plus location to try and find the proper battery size for them, only for both of these to not work. So if you would like to see one of these running, Arcade USA has a really great video showcasing the livestock car that would have come with the Power Steam set, and I'll link that video up above. I'm pretty disappointed these don't run. Now, these trains couple together using a simple hook and loop system. You just lift a car up and onto the loop of another. It's not a super positive feeling connection, and if a loop ever sags down too low, the cars are prone to uncoupling during off-track play. The good news is that the couplers can simply be pulled out and refitted upside down if they sag too much. Both wheel sets on these cars also turn, much like that rear wheel steering you can find on some cars. This is great for on-track use, but it causes them to roll very poorly off-track. Kind of think like how a shopping cart with a sticky wheel kind of always wants to go to the right. Well, good thing almost all these train releases came with track. Train sets generally came with 8 curves and 4 straights for a total of 12 pieces of track to make a small oval that would be about 9 inches wide and about 18 inches long. Track sections came in 5 different variations of straight, curve, switch, slope, and a bridge. Unfortunately, it doesn't get too much better on track. Putting trains onto the tracks is pretty finicky, and that's actually coming from someone who used to be an N-scale model railroader. The original 1989 version of this track comes with 2 guide rails in the middle, which makes it very difficult to put cars onto the track on a curve, as the hook coupler has to be in between the 2 rails to get the proper fit. Once you get the trains onto the track, the issues don't exactly stop there. Once the trains are in motion, wheels tend to get stuck on track joints if the track isn't perfectly aligned, and the longer trains really struggle to take these incredibly sharp corners very well at all, resulting in frequent derailment. Remember that passenger set with the sound car? Yeah, these really hate these turns, and putting the baggage car in between the locomotive and the sound-equipped passenger car will almost always result in a derailment. If you would like to avoid derailments, I probably wouldn't even go over 6 cars just to avoid them. The most frustrating thing about these little trains is that the derailment issue would not have been that hard of a fix, and we can actually look to the cars in the MicroMachines series for an answer. MicroMachines cars are all built on a metal base with a plastic body. This gives these little cars enough weight to stay on a playset, but not too much that they become a weapon of mass destruction when thrown. These trains are a different story. The only metal you'll find on these little trains is for the axles and the rivets holding them together. You'd be surprised at some of the weights of some of these trains. Both the ore car and this little Dodge Viper both weigh in at 6 grams each. They are identical in weight despite the fact that the Dodge Viper is half the size. We may seem like we're done, but Galoob had one more thing up their sleeve. This is the Powertrain City set. The eagle-eyed of you may have noticed this little thing sticking out the bottom of some of the locomotives. You push this towards the front of the locomotive and this little hook will pop out. For the 060, you push down on the smokestack and the hook comes out the bottom. These little hooks would slide into the track in the set, and a belt would push the train around the oval track, making for a motorized train. That's cute, that's neat, but I'm not going to shell out $80 for one. Galoob clearly put a lot of love and effort into this toy line, and even into its advertising. Much like the rest of the line, the commercials featured John Machida Jr., the world's fastest talker, also known as the MicroMachines Man. The commercial featured many of the prototypes of the trains, which originally shown were going to be even smaller. They were also originally going to have flanged wheels and proper trucks, much like a model train. I can only assume this idea was scrapped because these are hard enough to rail with a solid chassis riding on a guide rail in the middle. Never mind a much even smaller train with proper trucks. The GP Diesel also had handrails on its prototype. Speaking of as seen on TV, MicroMachines Trains can also be seen in a brief scene from the 1990 film Home Alone, where you can see the locomotive from the Iron Man #1 set in this shot, as well as the rest of the set, along with the TGV and the blue passenger train in this shot. The MicroMachines trains only lasted from 1989 to 1990, with the 1990 run only seeing regional releases. They only ran for a short run of 2 years. In fact, all of these trains are actually older than the real-world cars that these two micro-machines are supposed to represent. The line never saw any new products, although the track was updated in 1990 to remove the guide rails in the middle. But why? Why would you do that? Somehow that's worse. They had to know they made that worse, right? I genuinely have no idea why this line was discontinued. Maybe it was due to sales, or maybe high production costs, since you are selling 5 or 6 units of a sub-series that really didn't play much into the main Micro Machines line. Galoob seemed to have much bigger ambitions for this train line. As we know of a completely retooled and smaller version of the Power Sound stock car, a whole new 5-car set with an Alco P and B style locomotive with 3 new train cars, an old-time set with a 440 locomotive, and a set of brand new matching wood cars. Galoob would continue to produce the Micro Machines toy line until they were purchased by Hasbro in 1998, who discontinued most of the line promptly before formally killing it in 2006. Hasbro would attempt to create a new Micro Machines line a couple times, with the first being all fantasy toolings and a big flop, and the second time being a short-lived tie-in with Star Wars The Force Awakens. For 2020, the series saw a proper revival that is still going to this day. In fact, most of the cars in the video are actually from this revival, and there's some aspects of them I actually believe are better than the originals. As of 2023, trains still have yet to make a return in the current Micro Machines revival. But do we really need the trains back? The trains from the short run of 1989 to 1990 are quite collectible now, but certainly not out of reach for the more budget-conscious collector. I think the Micro Machines trains are certainly a neat novelty, but that's it. A novelty. They have this specific gimmick of being really small, and the fact that tiny things died off after a couple years, as other toy manufacturers that made larger vehicles like Hot Wheels and Matchbox quickly took the throne for sales back in the early 90s. In the current day and age, I don't see Hasbro as being particularly keen on bringing the trains back. But one can dream, and it certainly would be a nice surprise if the trains came rolling back.
Just with fixed track and these damn couplers. You have knuckle couplers right here!
Hey, thanks for watching me talk about a train toy that you definitely don't care about. It's been a hell of a time trying to get this video made, get it all researched, filmed, and edited, so it's always a big undertaking, and I hope the result came out acceptable or even good. Huge thanks to Twitter user @TrainFans for helping me out with this video. It wouldn't have been possible without his help, and he provided some great insight into some of the original prototypes of these little trains. It's so cool to finally actually own these trains. I've always thought they were neat ever since I saw them in Home Alone, because my mom got really, really excited when she saw Micro Machines in that film. Did you own any of these trains? If so, which ones did you own? Did you have the same problems I did with these? And do you think they should make a comeback? Well, leave a comment. Thanks for your time once again. MTE, signing off.